Everything you need to know about products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on CL 650.
Little GTO, you really looking fine.
Welcome back. If you're just joining the program, you're listening to Experts on Call on CL 650. I'm Joanne Sutton. Thanks for being here today. Our conversation for the last half hour or so has been all about insurance. Joining us in the studio, we have from Canada's largest insurance company, IntactInsurance. We have Patrick Magnuson and Keith Story. And we also have our resident broker, Andrew Tablotny from Laguerre Pelling Insurance right here in Richmond. Locally owned and operated for how many years, Andrew?
25.
25. At this point in the show, we're going to be talking about auto insurance. So let's just start off by talking a little bit about the history of how auto insurance is sold in British Columbia.
Well, we are what's called a government-run auto insurance program. There's only three of them in Canada. The rest are all privately run. There's private corporations that provide the insurance for the basic. So private companies also provide coverage for excess coverage, which we'll expand on as we go along. But 1972, I believe it was when Dave Barrett came in. That was part as the NDP. That was his baby to bring. They got rid of all the private companies and formed ICBC at that point in time and brought it in. So it's been, as I say, I've been around since '79. I've seen a lot of changes in the auto industry and the auto insurance industry and that. And people gripe about it, but at the end of the day, there is a lot of good that comes out of having the government-run insurance. So, maybe a little more costly, and sometimes there's issues with claims. There has been issues with claims in the past, but they're certainly getting better. Our no-fault system is certainly better than some of the options. You look at what's going on in Ontario now with the mass fraud that's going on there. They're over $1 billion a year in fraud claims and things like that. So it's kind of the devil you know versus the devil you don't. So. Mm-hmm. But you have to buy your first $200,000 coverage, which includes $1 million underinsured on your driver's license, and then everything after that is optional in terms of collision, which is for vehicles involved in an accident, or comprehensive, which is fire, theft, vandalism, or glass breakage.
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest point here is that there's still a large portion of the population that doesn't know that they have to buy it all from ICBC, that they can actually go to an independent broker, insurance company.
Yeah, so the independent broker like Andrew, they'll can sell you that mandatory piece of coverage, which was the $200,000 of third-party liability, and that covers you for the damage you would cause to someone else's vehicle or some injuries to somebody else if you hit them, and that $1 million underinsured motorist protection. Now that is as a mandatory coverage probably isn't enough coverage for most people.
It's sort of just like a blanket, simple.
That's the bare minimum.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you go to all provinces, 200,000 liability is the bare minimum. So,
Washington.
No, that's not a province.
25,000. All provinces get hit by somebody in Washington, then we got $25,000 worth of coverage.
That's right. So you can buy more through ICBC. You can buy all your other coverages, but so everything else is optional insurance. So anything higher than 200,000, so 200,000 up to $5 million of liability, any excess of that uninsured motorist protection, or any of the physical damage coverage. So Andrew alluded to them. So there's collision coverage, and that protects your vehicle from damage that's caused. So whether you hit something or if somebody hits you, there's comprehensive coverage, which is basically everything else. So whether it's fire, or theft, or vandalism,
or water, or earthquake.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, so it's now that stuff doesn't need to be sold through ICBC. You can get all that coverage through a private carrier like Intact. Mm-hmm. And we, as of January 1st, we completely revamped our optional auto product. It's much more competitive. We take advantage of some acquisitions that we've made, and we've been able to come up with a competitive product at a competitive price. And I think that it makes sense to shop. Or people don't always think that with a government insurer, with ICBC, that you have an opportunity to shop your product.
Well, I was just going to say, is it really worth shopping around for a product like that?
Absolutely it is.
Yeah.
I've been selling private auto through a different carrier since 1992. So I wasn't an Intact client, but I just had a lady recently. Her price was, I switched over to this other private carrier, and it was a $600 savings.
Oh my! Just on like a regular car, regular driving.
She's elderly client and been safe driving for multiple years of experience. ICBC looks at everybody equal. So if you've got 10 years of driving experience, whether you've got 10 years or 65 years, they consider you the same. Whereas the private companies look at you more forensically. So if you've been driving for 50 years and never had a claim, well, then they factor that in on the back end, which ICBC is not allowed to because they're not allowed to discriminate.
Well, that's a huge savings, $600 a year.
So it was a brand new car, and as I say, elderly lady, and they like and the private companies, they can discriminate, so they think that women are better drivers, so they give women better discounts.
I wouldn't say discriminate. I'd say that we selectively target based off of experience.
Yes. So what are some of the coverage options under this newly revamped product that you have at Intact?
Sure. So I mean, all those things like collision and comprehensive, that covers you for direct damage, but of course you also experience some indirect stuff. So we have a suite of packages that are designed to ensure that you have very robust coverage options. So it might include things like roadside assistance, lock rekeying. We have a claims advantage endorsement that provides a deductible waiver, because of course you might have a $500 collision deductible. We have an auto expert driver package that includes things like loss of use, so car rental coverage, as well as coverage to that damage to that rental car, even travel benefits coverage. And this one's pretty cool. So if you're on a vacation with your car, let's say it gets stolen or if it's an accident and it's not usable, then now maybe you're in Washington without a car. We'll pay additional living expenses. We'll pay expenses to return that damaged vehicle home. We'll pay replacement vehicle coverage for your trip, so you'll actually have, you're not going to ruin your vacation just because your car is ruined. You'll be able to find a replacement and continue on and enjoy your vacation and deal with the car later. So
if you had to stay a couple of extra days while your car's being repaired, then this new program would cover your hotel?
Right. Yeah, and additional travel expenses to return you home. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's more than just the direct damage component.
One feature I like, which helps with the claim settling, is that Intact will take your word. If you say, I'm not at fault, they'll settle. If that situation changes, they'll go back to you for the deductible afterwards. But if you say I'm not at fault, they waive your deductible and if the circumstances sound realistic. I mean, obviously, if you rear-ended 4 cars, well, chances are you're probably at fault. So, but if it was some question as to whether or not you were at fault or not, then they're prepared.
So we haven't talked any numbers at all. Is there a rough framework for how much should or how much does auto insurance cost?
Well, no, I don't think you can give a ballpark number. And like Andrew was saying, because there's a lot of different factors that are related to you, your car, your experience, and basically what we as insurance companies do is we analyze those factors.
Who else drives your car?
Where do you live?
Yeah. And we analyze those factors based off our experience and our history, which might be different than other ones, and we sort of are able to set our price based off our results, and we'll target the clients with the lower price that the ones that give us.
But ICBC does the same thing. I mean, sure. Believe it or not, you'll pay more on one side of Richmond than you will on the other. So they've got it. It's just like house insurance now. They've got it down to 6-digit postal codes for earthquake coverage.
Right.
So you can be 2 blocks over and you'll pay a higher rate for earthquake because you're closer to a riverbed under the ground that they don't know about. So
and
the same
if you're
thing
living in a high accident zone or whatever,
or high theft,
or rural or whatever. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, premiums are really individualized based off you and your unique situation. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What about premiums? Like basically, if I make a claim, is my insurance going to go up?
You always hear that one, and the answer is maybe. It depends what kind of claim it is. I mean, if it's if you're not at fault, or if it's if it's hailed, or if it's flooded or something like that, I mean, no, your premium doesn't go up directly as a result of that claim. Now, if you're at fault and you've hit somebody and you've caused damage, your insurance may go up unless you have that accident forgiveness coverage that we were talking about earlier. So, it depends, but the reason you have insurance is there to protect it, and say if it's not your fault, you're not going to have your premium go up as a result of that claim.
And we've already established that it does vary, and it can vary. Cost and prices can vary from one company to another.
One thing I want to bring to your listeners' attention is, we get a lot of clients come in and we talk about how much liability coverage they should have, and I'm just amazed at how many people only have $1 million or maybe even $2 million liability. ICBC right now is paying out 2 to 3 claims per week in the $2 to $3 million range.
Really?
And those are claims that happened 3, 5, 7 years ago.
So $1 million just isn't even
doesn't cut it. I mean, it's And it's not just the brain surgeon anymore. It's if you've got a young child that gets hit, I mean, their life expectancy is now 85 years. Well, what is it going to cost to keep them alive? Or keep them in full-time care for the next 80 years? Huge dollars.
Keith is sitting here nodding.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned something from the past shows, and it prompted me to go and to increase my liability coverage, not just through my auto, but with an umbrella policy, which we talked about previously. I don't think you can have too much.
Well, and with ICBC, they had a recent rate increase because liability claims have been going up so much. We're seeing now the difference between 1 million and 5 million liability is now $180 per car with a full discount. But you can buy an umbrella policy for $235, $250 for 2 cars in your house, and if you have other add-ons. So it's actually cost effective now to buy an umbrella policy. You end up with better coverage and more coverage.
At a very affordable rate.
You've just raised a lot of questions that we should be calling our brokers and asking. You are listening to Experts on Call on CL 650. I'm Joanne Sutton. Joining us in the studio today, we have the insurance experts, Patrick Magnuson and Keith Story, both from Intact Insurance, along with Andrew DeBlotny of Laguerre Pelling Insurance. You can always get more information on their website, intact.ca. So far today, we've covered a few of the basics of Insurance 101, earthquake, auto, water claims, water damage. We're not finished this conversation. A few more details and some highlights coming up next on CL 650.
This is Experts on Call on CL 650.